Oh, there's actually good. Okay. So there's actually a lot of reasons, and one is that the whole chemical industry is pretty unregulated. So in our country, we have over 85,000 chemicals that are registered to use. In Europe, there are over 140,000 because they have different standards. And actually, there are thousands more than that that are actually, used in products. And less than 1% of those have actually been thoroughly tested. We have about 15 chemicals that are banned out of all those thousands. Europe has 1,500. Cleaning things like cleaning products actually don't have to list ingredients, so sometimes you have no idea what you're getting. But California and New York do have new laws requiring that they list all of the ingredients. And just so you know, some companies have been caught that they will list some of the ingredients that don't sound too bad, and yet they have not listed all of the ingredients. Then you have things like fragrance is a loophole term. What is fragrance? Well, it can be any number or a combination of 4,000 chemicals that are used for fragrance. And some of these are carcinogens, but they don't have to list them. They can just say fragrance or perfume or something like that. And then chemicals are usually individually assessed for toxicity or how bad they are. But that's not the world we live in. Chemicals mix, and we don't usually know what happens with those mixtures and if it impacts our health. So that's a problem too. So that I think that's a big deal. So next slide, please, Jen. So this is just a little, word cloud. Some of these maybe you recognize: formaldehyde. That's actually a group 1 carcinogen. And there are lots of carcinogens on here: radon, benzene, all sorts of things. And all of these, and this is just a few out of all those thousands that we talked about, that are an issue and can relate to cancer. Next slide, please. So basically, toxins can be grouped into these 3 categories. Obviously, carcinogens. These are chemicals that actually cause cancer, or probably cause cancer, or possibly cause cancer. And there are about 400 of those chemicals that are listed. And I can tell you that in order to officially get listed, they have to have a voluminous amount of research behind them. So these are definite carcinogens, but the problem is we have so many that haven't been thoroughly tested, and so they're not listed there, and yet they still can be a problem. And you have another category, neurotoxins, and we're exposed to those a lot. And those can affect a lot of health issues. You can see listed there. And then the last one are endocrine disrupting chemicals. We call those EDCs. And this is kind of a new category of chemicals. And basically, they affect the endocrine system, which is a bunch of glands in the body that basically make your body function. And a lot of those are reproductive functions. They keep you warm, they keep you cold, cold. They make you grow, they make you change from a girl to a woman. So these hormones can be mimicked by chemicals sometimes, but they don't do a very good job. So they can do some damage, and they can very much be an issue for certain cancers. So we're going to talk about that later. Of these 3, the first 2 categories, so carcinogens and neurotoxins, they usually follow what's called the dose makes the poison. Okay, so if you are exposed to more of it, it's more poisonous. And that's I'm sure you've all heard that expression before. But the last one is kind of weird, the endocrine disruptors. They actually can do a lot of damage at really, really tiny dosages. And that's been alarming. So a lot of endocrine scientists have come out and said, we can't actually say there is a safe limit for some of these chemicals that are EDCs. They just won't go on the record of that. And that's really disturbing because there are a lot that we're exposed to. So next one, please. So just real quickly, this is just a picture of the endocrine system. So you can, I'm sure you've all heard of the thyroid, the pancreas, and the prostate, and these different glands. So the endocrine system is pretty important to our body. So if we're having, chemicals that we're exposed to, whether it's through fragrance or food or cleaning products that are affecting this is a big issue. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about things like breast cancer and some of the chemicals that we're exposed to that will mimic or pretend that they are estrogenic as well, because there are chemicals that are pseudo estrogens. So next slide, please. So with regard to toxins, they're all around us. So they're in the air and the water and the soil and our food, and basically nothing is pure anymore, which makes me sad. However, and you could say, oh, then what's the point? What's the point in doing anything about it if we're so exposed? But you can, and we'll get to the dose makes the poison issue there. But just so you know, our environment's pretty bad. We just don't want to make it worse. And how are we exposed to all these toxins that are all around us? Basically, 3 different ways. And that's on the right of this graphic. So you have inhalation, you breathe it in. You have direct contact or dermal or skin. So, that's why things going on your skin like shampoo and lotions are very important. Then you have ingestion. So that's what you're eating and drinking. So those are the 3 primary ways that we are exposed to toxins. And that's really important to think about when you're trying to do these lifestyle changes. Next slide, please. And just as a reminder that you have 2 kinds of chemicals. You have natural ones and man-made ones. And not all chemicals are bad. And some natural chemicals are carcinogens. You have things like radon and arsenic, and even the little seeds in the apple and stuff like that are considered toxins. And you have lots of man-made chemicals that are perfectly fine, but then you have some that are very toxic. So just to be fair to chemicals, everything's a chemical, right? Well, you have some good and then you have some not so good. So just as a reminder. Next slide, please. So how do we get to know that chemicals were related to cancer? Well, and we can't do experiments on humans, right? So, but how this all came about was basically cancer coming up in the workplace. So what they started seeing years ago, actually, the first workplace cancer issue was people who clean out chimneys. So back in London, and the guys cleaning out the soot and the chimneys and all that stuff, all of a sudden they're getting cancer. And so that was the first time they associated work with cancer. And that's where a lot of our research comes. You have the factory workers, you have, people who are laying down tar, you have hairdressers have a high association of cancer. Firefighters, they're one of the highest in terms of workplace cancers. So this is how we know a lot of this has come about, is because of workplace cancer causes. So next slide, please. So basically, we don't have a lot of research in terms of how do you change your home environment? Is that going to affect cancer? Does somebody's clean home going to result in less risk of cancer versus somebody's very chemically dirty home? Well, we can't do that because we just don't do that kind of research on humans. However, we can sort of extrapolate from this pretty basic concept of, if stopping smoking reduces your risk of cancer and heart disease, why would you not apply this to all other chemical exposures? After all, smoking is a bunch of chemicals, right? I mean, it's hundreds of chemicals in smoking cigarettes. So applying that, and we know we have plenty of research now. In fact, some came out just recently, how if you stop smoking when you're diagnosed with cancer, you have a great amount of reduced risk in terms of your continued success in longevity and that kind of stuff. So the smoking issue is huge, and basically it's great to apply that to all chemical exposures. So we're trying to reduce that. Next slide, please. So after tonight, if you come away with anything, it's this slide right here. So we talked about inhalation, ingestion, and dermal contact. So those are the three ways that we're exposed to chemicals, right? But how bad is a chemical? What is the risk to our health? So in red, you have your basic toxicology formula. And this is as basic as it comes. You have exposure times hazard equals risk of health, risk of disease, risk of cancer. So exposure times hazard is key. Hazard, sometimes we can't do a lot about, but exposure is what we can do about. We can reduce our exposure. So we can do that by lifestyle changes, changing, what we're drinking out of, what we're putting on our skin, keeping our air clean. So exposure makes a huge difference if you lower it, because it's a multiplication times hazard equals lower risk. Basically, it translates into the dose makes the poison. And I'm sure all of you have heard the dose makes the poison. Yes? Show of hands. Dose makes the poison.
Mm-mm.
So alcohol is a great example of this, right? So consider alcohol the hazard, but the exposure is the dose. Okay, 1 drink a week, not a big deal, right? 1 liter of vodka a day, that's your exposure. That's a high risk, okay? So the dose makes the poison. And that's true in so many things. That's true in some micronutrients that we actually need as human beings, like nickel. But if you have it in a high dose or a high exposure, then that can become poisonous. So again, the dose makes the poison. Exposure is what we are all about trying to reduce. And that's easier than you think, and we'll go over that. So next slide, please. So where is all this stuff that we're talking about, all these chemicals and all these toxins? So in the bedroom, you have things like the mattress and the sheets and PVC plastic blinds and pillows and dry cleaning and dust and mothballs and all that stuff. In the bathroom, you have personal care products, shower curtains, cleaners, fragrance. I put toys in the bathroom just for fun. Nail polish. In the living room, you have carpet, fabrics, candles, EMFs, that's electromagnetic fields. Most people talk about their cell phone, but it comes from anything that's electric. Electronics, foam, cash register receipts, air fresheners. In the kitchen, you have your cookware, plastics, pesticides, food contact materials. Those are really important. And in the garage or basement, you have VOCs. Those are things, are gases that have evaporated, solvents. You have lead on your garden hose. You have diesel exhaust from your car, driveway sealers. There's lead on electric cords, pesticides, stuff like that. So these are some of the locations that we're talking about in terms of where these toxins might be. Next slide, please. So let's just jump right into some of the solutions. And I'm just going to give you 3 basic ones, even though it said the bedroom had, maybe more than this, but these are the 3 most important ones. The mattress, if you can afford a new mattress, I strongly suggest that you try and get an organic one or a naturally made one, or one that has a high rating. And the reason mattresses are so important, do you remember the exposure in the slide we just said? Because we're exposed, how often do we sleep? 1/3 of our life in bed, right? 8 hours a day in bed. So that's a high exposure rate. So that's why, having a safe mattress that doesn't have flame retardants and not off-gassing from the foam and that kind of stuff is so important. So if you're in the market for a new mattress, do try and get that, please. Then you have dry cleaning. You know, that lovely dry cleaning smell, it's from perk. That is a carcinogen, just so you know. So try to avoid dry cleaning. If you must dry clean, leave it on the porch or outside for a few days, and that's will get out most of the toxins. But you know, it's pretty easy to avoid dry cleaning. You know, they didn't have dry cleaning 100 years ago, and we had all these clothes. So, clothing and bedding. You want to make sure that they don't come with these nice little, you know, keywords, marketing words like wrinkle resistant and permanent press and wrinkle free and stain repellents and waterproofing and all that kind of stuff. Because that means that they put chemicals on them, and most of them are either flame retardants, formaldehyde does the anti-wrinkle thing, or Teflon, the PFAS chemicals will do the stain repellents and the waterproofing. So you definitely want to avoid those keywords and get used to wrinkles. Sorry, but there's the iron. That's okay. And you know, look for cotton and linen and wool as possibilities. So next slide, please.
I'm not sure why it's not. Is that
there we go.
Next one.
Yeah, great. So in the bathroom, if you have a shower curtain that's PVC, I don't know if any of you recognize that sweet, sicky kind of smell. You'll get it sometimes in new cars, although they've started changing that. But shower curtains is a huge one, or sometimes certain plastics. And that's a really, really toxic chemical. It's releasing phthalates. They are a serious endocrine disruptor. They are associated with infertility and genital deformities and all kinds of stuff. So if you have a PVC curtain, get rid of it now. And it's so easy. You can get a PIVA or an EVA curtain. Those are basically nylon. They're not toxic. They're cheap. They're under $5 or so. And those are good alternatives. Personal care products and cosmetics. You really want to be aware of the ingredients in them. And that's really hard because you look at the ingredients and you can't even pronounce them. You have no idea what they are. And again, not all of them are going to be bad. But you have two sources here that are really great for helping you figure that out. So you have the EWG, the Environmental Working Group, and it's called Skin Deep. So if you just Google Skin Deep EWG, it's going to come up. And they rank products, which is great. They tell you the ingredients and what's in them, and it's rated from 0 to 10 in terms of, you know, 10 is the worst. So it's a super database and resource. And the other one, if you're ordering anything online, is an app called Clearia, and you can either have it on your phone or your computer, and that also will alert you to ingredients you want to stay away from. So these are super because, again, we're talking about the skin, right? That's one of the ways we're exposed. So there are some things that you can do and look for. So air fresheners in the bathroom, that's often where people either are squirting things or they have plug-ins, and all those things are emitting really bad chemicals. Again, fragrance is at the top of the list in terms of some of the things you want to avoid. And we like our place to smell a little nice. So what did Grandma used to do? She used to use things like lavender and balsam and cedar chips and stuff like that. So, you know, that can certainly help put some nice scents in your place. You can open up the windows on a nice warmer day. We just had one in New Hampshire, and it really felt kind of good to open up the windows, but not in February. But anyway, so next slide, please. Okay, living room. So just so you know, electronics, you have your TV, maybe your computer, all sorts of, you know, plugins, lamps, anything. But basically electronics. So the TV is going to be the big thing. They're all coated with flame retardants, and it's a coating that's not real stable. So if dust attaches or sits on top of the TV, that dust absorbs the flame retardants. And then if you go dusting and it goes back into the air and you breathe it, then you are exposed to flame retardants. So that's where you want to keep dust to a minimum. You want to wet dust if you can. And if you're touching any of that, you want to maybe wash your hands. Just so you know, our exposure to flame retardants is about 70% from dust in our home. So, which is kind of crazy to think about that. So, this is one way to do it. Carpets and furniture, they can again contain a lot of dust, and dust is a magnet for any chemicals floating in the air. So you want to vacuum regularly, otherwise you're just going to kick it up when you walk across your carpet. If you want to really clean it, use a nice steam cleaner. You want to avoid, again, some of the keywords like stain repellents, and they will put flame retardants usually in carpet padding. Wool carpets are a super alternative. You can also do you can just have wood floors and maybe some, nice old wool oriental rug. Sorry. Those are great alternatives. In terms of furniture, you want to purchase untreated cotton. Sorry. Or wool fabrics, they're great. Anything that's a synthetic is going to be like a plastic, and it's going to break down and you'll inhale that. So be aware of the fabrics that you are choosing. In the living room, you have candles and sometimes incense. So if you're going to burn those, I suggest you stick to 100% soy or 100% beeswax, and make sure it says 100%. Avoid a scent, but if you need one, stick to organic essential oils. I don't recommend burning incense because they create soot, and it goes deep into the lungs. So that's not a good idea. And so that should finish off the solutions. So next slide, please. There we go. Oh, everybody's favorite topic here, the kitchen. So cookware and utensils. What can I use that's safe? Stick to stainless steel, cast iron, or real ceramic, or enamel, if you will. Do not use nonstick. So there are the two categories of nonstick. You have your old Teflon type, and then you have this sort of new, green category. And I don't recommend it. Is it better than the old Teflon type? Yes, but it has not thoroughly been researched at all. And so just because they say, that it has no toxins, well, you haven't proved to us otherwise that it's harmless. So it's a moving target. They have shown some leaching of some things. So just stick to the cast iron and the stainless steel. They're my favorite. You can find them in Goodwill and thrift shops all the time. You can scrub the heck out of them. Nothing happens to them, and they're going to last forever. So I do suggest that you stick to those, that kind of cookware. Plastic is all over our kitchen. It's all over the house and everything, but we have a lot of it in the house. So you want to stay away from plastic food storage if you can. Use glass and ceramic or metal, stainless steel if you can. Try not to use the plastic wrap directly against the food, and minimize eating from and drinking from cans, whether it's canned beans or a can of seltzer water, because all of those cans, or I should say all the beverage cans, are lined with BPA. I'm sure everybody's heard of BPA here. And that's the estrogen mimicking hormone, endocrine disrupting chemical. And then canned foods is kind of a moving target. A lot of companies have been good about changing the inside of their cans because it's not tin anymore like the old days. So a lot of them still are lined with BPA, but some of them are not. But the companies don't publicize it on their label because they're changing it so frequently, it costs money to change the label. So you have to contact the company and ask them what they're using. And sometimes they tell you and sometimes they won't. And it's kind of a moving target. So if you can stay away from drinking and using canned foods, frozen's a great option. Dried beans is a great option. And not any more expensive, certainly. So try and stay away from plastic in the kitchen, please. And then there's air quality in the kitchen, mostly from the cooking, even on electric. Just the fact that you're heating up and burning a little bit of food releases toxins into the air. However, gas stoves are the worst. There's absolutely no question about how toxic they can be. And I have one. I didn't know. I put it in and I love it, but I run that vent like crazy when I use it. So venting is very, very important. No matter what kind of cooking you're doing, if you have a vent, please use it at all times. If you don't, use the back burners. Use the back burners anyway. Open a window if possible. But we really want to keep our air quality good in our homes. And we also have an ebook on the anti-cancer website that is terrific it goes into a little bit more detail in terms of the healthy kitchen, which is a very popular topic. Next slide, please. So the laundry room, what's in the laundry room? Laundry soap. And laundry soap and cleaners is a category where technically they don't have to list the ingredients. And so sometimes, if you can't read the ingredients, you don't know what's in there. You can, again, check with EWG for the laundry soaps and the cleaners. They will be a guide. But, you don't have to go crazy we're never going to be in a sterile world. And that should not be our goal. We just want clean. We don't want crumbs on the floor so the little mice come into the house, right? So we can calm down now that COVID's over and get back to basic cleaning. We don't need a cleaner for every single thing in the house. You can just use a hot rag and wipe it down. You can use vinegar and baking soda. That's inexpensive. Use them separately because they're useless if you combine them. They cancel each other out. And dryer sheets, please don't use dryer sheets. They have all sorts of chemicals on them. In fact, the chemicals can actually be a fire hazard because some of the chemicals are sort of plasticky and they stick together in the exhaust of the dryer. So you can use some wool balls or hang dry, but please don't use dryer sheets. Again, they have some potentially some endocrine disrupting chemicals in there. Next slide, please. So think basement, maybe garage, maybe barn or whatever, a closet. So you have VOCs, that's volatile organic compounds, which are chemicals that have evaporated. And so if you have some cleaning products and they're just sitting there and you can smell them, or if you were in a grocery store and you're walking down the cleaning aisle, you know what aisle it is, right? Because it smells. And that's why all these VOCs are being released. And so they can come from your cleaning products, your paints, your glues, your solvents, all kinds of stuff. And you just want to be aware of what you have. If you can stick to low or no VOC paints, keep all this stuff together. Ventilate if you can, keep it away from the stairway so the chemicals don't rise up into your living area. In the basement, radon, we have a huge radon problem in New Hampshire. So if you haven't tested if you have a basement, I strongly suggest that you test it. Most states have a free testing kit. And pesticides is a place, basement and garages is often the storage place for pesticides. And, different parts of the country they can have some pretty bad pests. But really try for the non-chemical controls like traps and natural repellents and diatomaceous earth if you can. If you have to store pesticides, put them either in a big, giant, garbage bag to tie it up and at least seal it away. And put them all together and minimize the use of, again, you want to reduce your exposure and minimize the use of things like pesticides, and certainly, wear protective clothing if need be. Next slide, please. So cleaning is a big popular area. And again, it comes down to the ingredients. So you can use the EWG cleaning guide, but just look for simple stuff. You don't need, 50 different complicated chemicals. That's not going to really help. You want to choose from companies that are really dedicated to doing the right thing and actually list all the ingredients. Again, please avoid fragrance. There's some really, really serious EDCs in there. Avoid bleach. We don't need to necessarily bleach. The problem with bleach is that when it combines with organic material like the dirt, it actually creates new chemicals. And these new chemicals, the disinfecting byproducts, actually are an issue, and some are carcinogens. So use a hand sanitizers, look for alcohol-based. Again, you don't need all the chemicals. Safest disinfecting cleaner, again, is alcohol. Think about dwell time. You want again, exposure, 20 seconds at least, to make sure you kill all the germs. And then that way you're going to have a better cleaning, healthier cleaning experience there. So next slide, please. So where are you going to begin on all this now that you're probably overwhelmed and all that kind of stuff? So actually, there's different ways to approach all this. One is the ease of solution. So, something easy like taking your shoes off when you come in your house minimizes all the dust. Washing your hands after you're playing with electronics or something like that. That's a pretty easy thing to do. If you want to know your known carcinogens, it's like, oh, I know now that there's a carcinogen on dry cleaning. So I know that. So I'm going to avoid that. So known carcinogens. Cost effectiveness ratio, again, something really simple to do. Taking off shoes doesn't cost anything, and yet it's very, very effective. You can begin with the type of cancer you have. So if you have lung cancer, you're going to want to really try and keep your air quality good and as clean as you can. If you have skin cancer, you want to be careful of the kind of things that you put on your skin. If you have breast cancer, you want to be very much aware of these endocrine disrupting chemicals, especially categories like phthalates and BPA or your bisphenols. Lessons you can go by if you're going to take the online course, you can go by the topics. I'm going to start here, or you can start. The last one is location in the home. You can start room by room. Okay, I'm going to start in the living room. What am I going to do? Actually, a lot of people love starting in the kitchen or the bathroom. So you can go by room. So these are different ways that you can get started. So next slide, please. So the anti-cancer program really embraces the precautionary principle. Because so much of the research with chemicals and cancer, we don't have all the answers yet. We have a lot of red flags, but we often don't have a lot of things definitive. And I've been in this long enough so that I've seen those red flags become no longer red flags. They were definitive. Yes, this is a problem. This causes cancer. This is related to this. So I've seen it over and over and over again. So this is why we want to be cautious. So you want to take a proactive approach, do what you can, taking preventative actions. That's maybe, reducing your exposure in the face of uncertain harm until things are proven harmless, not proven toxic, proven harmless. So next slide, please. So this is right from the anti-cancer program. So we have 5 keys to an anti-cancer lifestyle. The first and most important one is keep your air clean. So you can ventilate, you can reduce smoking and tobacco, you can reduce the use of candles or change what you're burning. Wood burning is very much a carcinogen. You can reduce VOCs. You can wet dust versus, the little duster that puts everything back in the air. You want to take your shoes off. Number 2 is minimize the use of plastic and petroleum byproducts. Do not use non-stick Teflon. So that's easier said than done sometimes. But again, exposure, how much plastic are you using? If you can reduce your plastic use by half, that's super. Then you're reducing your risk. Okay, get back to that formula we talked about. Number 3, minimize the eating and use of pesticides. So if you can reduce it by eating more organic, that's great. I know organic can get expensive. The EWG Environmental Working Club, I'm sure you've heard of the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15 maybe. And if you can use that, that's really a terrific resource there. Because pesticides, we still have pesticides in our country that are known carcinogens that are banned in many other countries around the world, but we still allow them. So we're ingesting those. Number 4, read the labels and know your ingredients. And number 5, remember less is more. So lots of times less ingredients is going to give us a better product. Just all sorts of things, less is more. Simplify things, simplify your life. But you can also go back to the bottom here, focus on inhalation, skin, and ingestion. It really comes down to those 3 areas. So if you want to think, oh, what can I do? This is a good way to categorize things on how you can help yourself. So next slide, please. I think we're done. So that was a lot. That's a lot of information. So I'm ready to take questions.